the Alex Murdaugh.
Day 9 of the double
Week 3 of the Alex 100 hours of testimony.
This is the 14th day of
As
the
that
double
trial
murder.
drags into week 4,
This is day 17.
Now the defense called more witnesses.
Day 22 of the Alex Murdaugh.
Week 6, day 25, and the double murder trial of Alex Murdaugh continues in Colleton
Alex
County.
Murdaugh's on trial for the double homicide of his wife, Maggie, and his son, Paul, near the dog kennels of their family's hunting estate. Local media has called it the trial of the century in South Carolina. It has attracted media from across the world.
Their family.
Alex Murdaugh used to be a really predominant lawyer in South Carolina and is a member of this very powerful legal dynasty.
On the evening of June 7th, 2021, his son Paul Murdaugh was standing in a small feed room in some kennels they had on the property. The defendant over there, Alex Murdaugh, took a 12-gauge shotgun and shot him in the chest and the shoulder. But after that, another shot went up under his head and did catastrophic damage.
The lead prosecutor for the state is Creighton Waters.
Just moments later, he picked up a .300 Blackout, an AR-style rifle, and opened fire on his wife, Maggie, pow pow, and killed her instantly.
Alex Murdaugh's claim is that he ate dinner with his family, took a nap on the couch. He goes to visit his mother, comes home just after 10 p.m. and finds his wife and child shot and killed.
This is Alex Murdaugh. My wife and child are shot badly.
Copy, I'm going on scene.
His immediate reaction was to start telling me about an incident that had happened with his son with a boating accident.
My son was in a boat wreck a few months back. He's been getting threats. I know that's what it is.
I'm Seth Stoughton. I'm a law professor at the University of South Carolina. Paul Murdaugh was on a boat with some other individuals. There was drinking. The boat crashed and one of the individuals on the boat, Mallory Beach, was killed.
He told you that it was just random vigilantes from the boat case of which there is no evidence whatsoever.
They were alleging that Alec wanted to murder his wife and son because he wanted to hide the fact that he'd been stealing millions of dollars from his law firm and his clients for years.
This is a spreadsheet referencing each client and the amount that was stolen from each client. $225,073.46, $112,500, $338,056.14.
And why did y'all have to pay all that money back?
Because Alec had stolen it.
The facts are what matter here. The facts.
Murdaugh's got some heavy hitters on his side. Dick Harpootlian is the Johnny Cochran of South Carolina.
Did he murder his wife and son?
No.
Does he have any idea who did?
No.
There's no eyewitness. There's no fingerprints. There's no forensics tying him to the crime. None.
The prosecution has had one major smoking gun in its case, and it's Paul Murdaugh's video that he took at 8:44 p.m.
Hey, he's got burners now. Come here, Bubba. Come here, Bubba. Cash.
Did you recognize any voices on that video?
Paul Murdaugh, Maggie Murdaugh, and Alex Murdaugh.
You recognize Alex's voice?
Yes, sir.
How will they explain that Alec was actually at the dog kennels 5 minutes before the murder when he claims to have been sleeping?
Were you in fact at the kennels at 8:44 p.m. on the night Maggie and Paul were murdered?
I was.
You continued lying after that night, did you not?
But once I lied, I continued to lie. Yes, sir.
Would you ever do anything to harm Maggie?
I would never hurt Maggie. I did not kill Maggie. I did not kill Paul.
The State versus Richard Alexander Murdaugh. Verdict, guilty.
It doesn't matter how prominent you are. If you do wrong, if you break the law, if you murder, then justice will be done in South Carolina.
It was a field trip to a ghost town.
Off a country road, the procession turned slowly up the long driveway of the imposing property. This convoy held the jury in the double murder trial of Alex Murdaugh. This is Moselle, the hunting lodge of the Murdaugh family. Alec, his wife Maggie, and sons Paul and Buster. The jury was taken to the dog kennels and the small feed room where Paul had been shot at close range with a shotgun. A few yards away, Maggie was shot several times with a .300 blackout rifle. Neither weapon has ever been found. There was a time when this estate reflected the vast power and prestige of the Murdaugh legal dynasty. Now the withered ground seemed to echo Alex Murdaugh's steep fall from grace. From a rich, powerful lawyer to an admitted drug addict,
Oxycodone, Oxycontin,
thief,
I stole money that was not my money,
and convicted murderer.
Verdict, guilty.
What do you think of the verdict, Alec? It's inside of my car.
This is where Alex Murdaugh's life unraveled on June 7th, 2021.
This is your wife and son?
And son.
Okay.
I knew it was really bad.
That night, when Murdaugh was interviewed by investigators, he was quick to offer up an explanation for the murders of his wife and son.
My son Paul was in a boat wreck. There's been a lot of negative publicity about that, and there's been a lot of people online just really vile stuff.
The crash that would kill 19-year-old Mallory Beach happened about 2:20 a.m. on February 24th, 2019.
911, where's your emergency?
We're in a boat crash on Arthur Creek.
When a boat carrying 6 young friends smashed into a bridge, Connor Cook made the frantic call to 911.
There's 6 of us and one is missing.
Okay, who's missing?
Female Mallory Beach is missing.
Okay.
She's in the water.
She was just this wonderful, fun-loving, happy girl. And everybody loved her.
Lynn Revis and her niece Mallory were extremely close.
You always got a hug hello and a hug goodbye. And the last thing she told me was she loved me.
In piecing together events, investigators learned earlier that night, 19-year-old Paul Murdaugh used his older brother Buster's ID to buy beer at this convenience store.
And if you look at the video footage, when Paul comes out of the store, he's holding the beer up, he's celebrating.
After staying at a party for several hours, the group took the Murdaugh family's boat to this bar, where Paul and Connor had more to drink around 1 a.m.
They went in, pounded a couple of shots.
Michael DeWitt is an author and editor of the Hampton County Guardian, part of the Gannett USA Today network.
Somewhere around 1:30, you see the video footage of them leaving the boat dock. It was kind of a sad, touching moment when you see Mallory and her boyfriend. I think it's the last moment that anybody captured an image of her alive.
It was around 1:15 when they took off again on the boat.
Paul was just driving and doing donuts and just...
Passenger Miley Altman told investigators tempers were running short.
And so Connor starts driving for a little bit, and then Paul, he stops Connor, and he's like, no, this is my boat, let me drive. I saw the bridge coming.
What bridge is it? Paul, what bridge is this?
First responders' dash cam video captured the mayhem.
All right, where's everybody else at? Everyone at the bridge, at the bottom of the bridge.
Everybody was crying, scared, shocked, just worried about their friend.
Then Beaufort County Deputy Sheriff Stephen Domino was one of the first on the scene. After Domino got Mallory's distraught boyfriend Anthony Cook into his patrol car, Paul Murdaugh came into sight.
He was walking up from where the boat was.
Get that right there away from me.
He actually tried to rush through me to get to Paul because I guess he saw him smiling.
Paul's smiling while Anthony's girlfriend's missing in the water.
Right.
Bro, you smiling like you're funny. My girlfriend
been going, folks.
That's when Anthony Cook definitively identified the person he said was driving the boat.
Y'all know Alex Murdaugh?
Oh, yeah, I know that name.
That's his son.
That's so driving the boat.
Good luck.
That's when he indicated that he couldn't be touched.
Mallory's body was found a week later.
And in the weeks after that, we're just waiting. Is someone going to make an arrest? Is there going to be a admission of guilt or responsibility?
We're in a boat crash.
I think that from day one, ground zero, the effort was, what can we do to get Paul out of this?
Who do you think is responsible for Mallory's death?
I think Paul Murdaugh was.
A month after the fatal boat crash, frustrated that there was no arrest, Mallory Beach's family filed a wrongful death suit against members of the Murdaugh family, which allowed them to depose the survivors about what happened that night.
Paul was allegedly acting rash and reckless.
In his deposition, Paul's friend Connor Cook said that the morning of the crash, he didn't tell investigators that Paul was driving the boat because he was afraid. And while at the hospital, he says he was told by Alex Murdaugh that he didn't need to tell anyone who was driving.
Alex reportedly went from room to room to try to communicate with the other boat crash passengers and get them all on the same page.
At the hospital, several hours after the crash, Paul's blood alcohol level was 3 times over the legal limit.
He was getting belligerent with the nurses, staff, according to court records, just being loud and troublesome.
But that morning, and for weeks to come, many felt that Paul Murdaugh was not treated like a suspect in a crime.
We didn't think he was going to be charged.
Why?
Because it was taking so long. We just didn't think we'd see that day.
Nearly 2 months after the boat crash, Paul was charged with causing the death of Mallory Beach. He pleaded not guilty and remained free after posting bond, and the Murdaugh name began to tarnish. 2 years passed, and on June 7, 2021, as Paul Murdaugh was awaiting trial in the death of Mallory Beach, gunfire erupted on the Murdaugh family estate.
This is Alex Murdaugh at 4147 Moselle Road.
At 10:06 p.m., a panic-sounding Alex Murdaugh called 911, saying he had just arrived home to find his wife of nearly 28 years, Maggie, and their son, Paul, shot.
Is he moving at all, your son? I know you said that she was shot, but what about your son?
Nobody. They're not. Neither one of them's moving.
Maggie's friend, Caroline Price, called her godson Buster when she heard the terrible news.
I said, please tell me this isn't true. And he said, yes, ma'am, Miss Caroline, it is. And he immediately, without prompt, said it was premeditated and revenge. They were trying to say that it was associated with the boat crash.
That someone was angry at Paul.
Yeah. Right.
Due to the Murdaugh family's close ties with local law enforcement, the South Carolina Law Enforcement Division, known as SLED, the state's top investigative agency, took over the case.
It was amazing to me how quick this rumor mill started.
Maggie's friend Shelley West heard about the murders from a friend.
I just said, do you think Alec did it? And he said, no, there were 2 guns on the scene.
But it actually crossed your mind that he might have done it?
Yeah, I mean, that was my first initial reaction. A lot of times the husband's the first suspect.
And Caroline says she had a strange conversation with him after Maggie and Paul's funeral.
He talked a lot about Paul. The fact that he wasn't going to get his day in court, he wasn't going to get to clear his name.
Murdaugh offered a $100,000 reward as rumors and speculation swirled. Reports at the time raised questions about their marriage and claimed that Maggie was consulting with a divorce attorney.
Mary and her sister asked me, do you know anything about this? And I said, no. And she said, she never said anything to me, and she tells me everything.
Maggie never mentioned there was any trouble in the marriage.
Mm-mm.
At a hearing a few months later, I questioned the Murdaugh family attorney Dick Harpootlian about the Murdaugh's relationship.
Were there any problems in Maggie and Alex's marriage?
Absolutely none. None. And I'm trust me, I was with them for almost 2 years. Always affectionate, always courteous, just a picture of a domestic bliss.
And as for the theory that the murders were in retaliation for the boat crash, Maggie's friends say she never mentioned any threats against their family.
She talked about how unkind everybody was and mean.
The looks and the sneers.
And they didn't seem to feel unsafe. I mean, they were still carrying on with their normal routine, day-to-day activities and things.
As investigators tried to figure out who would want Paul and Maggie Murdaugh dead and why, a call came into 911 that another member of the family was under attack.
Somebody stopped to help me, and they tried to shoot me.
And it's almost been a case of episodic television where tune in this week and we'll see what's next from Hampton County, home of the Murdaughs.
Three months after the shooting deaths of Maggie and Paul, Alex Murdaugh again called 911, this time claiming he'd been shot.
Somebody stopped to help me, and they tried to shoot me.
Alex Murdaugh told investigators he was changing a flat tire right here on this rural road when a person in a pickup truck passed by, asked Alex if he was having car trouble, and then shot him in the head.
Murdaugh's conversation on the way to the hospital was captured on police body cam.
You know what kind of gun it was? I don't know what kind of gun it was, but it sounded like a shotgun.
On September 6, 2021, 2 days after being shot, Alex Murdaugh released this statement. "I have made a lot of decisions that I truly regret," he said, and announced he was leaving the law firm.
Alex Murdaugh put out a statement saying he's going into rehab.
Alex Murdaugh said he had been addicted to opioids for 2 decades. It wasn't only claims of drug abuse now staining Murdaugh's reputation. He was also accused of stealing millions from his own law firm and was asked to resign the day before he was shot.
Friday, the law firm has a come to Jesus meeting with him. We know you're allegedly stealing money, you're out. Saturday, the reported shooting. Monday, Alex releases a statement saying, "I'm going into rehab."
Then came the even more bizarre news that Murdaugh had allegedly hired this man, his distant cousin Curtis Smith, to shoot him.
He wanted you to kill him.
Yeah, he wanted me to kill him.
Authorities say Murdaugh wanted his killing to look like murder so his surviving son Buster could collect a $10 million life insurance payout. Smith says he refused.
Yeah. Ain't happening.
It's unclear exactly how Murdaugh came to be shot.
Why did you leave the scene?
I didn't know anything else to do.
Smith was charged in connection with the shooting, but has not entered a plea. On September 16, 2021, facing charges of insurance fraud, conspiracy, and filing a false police report, Alex Murdaugh turned himself in.
The fact that Murdaugh sat in a chair in a jumpsuit with handcuffs is something I've never seen in my lifetime.
Alex Murdaugh was released on bond and allowed to go back to rehab. While Murdaugh was there, investigators were looking into all of his business dealings and the suspicious death of this woman, Gloria Satterfield.
Gloria was the housekeeper for the Murdaugh family for more than 20 years.
Ronnie Richter is an attorney for the Satterfield family.
She literally helped raise Alex Murdaugh's sons, Paul and Buster.
In 2018, the 57-year-old died after a fall at the Murdaugh estate.
What's been reported is that she was at the house that day on the front steps. The dogs got a little rambunctious and gave her a push, and she fell down the stairs.
Satterfield's death was ruled natural, and no autopsy was ever performed.
There's nothing natural about a 57-year-old woman falling down a flight of steps and dying from head trauma.
At Gloria's funeral, Murdaugh did something very odd, says Richter. He recommended Gloria's sons file a wrongful death lawsuit against him. Murdaugh even steered them toward an attorney, his friend, Corey Fleming.
A lot of trust was placed in both Alec and in Corey to do the right things. And it really went south from the outset.
Court documents show a $4.3 million payout by Murdaugh's insurance company, but none of the money ever went to Gloria's family.
Where did that money go?
Well, allegedly it went into Alex Murdaugh's pocket.
Alex Murdaugh was charged with 2 felonies for his role in the Gloria Satterfield insurance fraud. This time, a judge ordered him to be held without bond. As Murdaugh sat in jail, he was indicted on dozens more charges for defrauding clients out of millions of dollars. And then in July of 2022, more than a year after the grisly murders,
Disgraced South Carolina attorney Alex Murdaugh was indicted today in the high-profile murders of his wife and son last year.
Alec Murdaugh was charged with killing his wife Maggie and son Paul. Maggie's friends were relieved that the case was moving forward.
I was kind of like, phew,
Yeah.
finally, and maybe we're going to get some answers.
Alex Murdaugh! Why did you kill your wife and your son?
On January 25th, 2023, 19 months after Maggie and Paul were gunned down near the dog kennels at their family hunting estate,
That the defendant, Alex Murdaugh over there, told anyone who would listen that he was never at those kennels.
prosecutor Creighton Waters began laying out the state's case against Alec Murdaugh.
But the evidence is also going to show from these things that every one of us, most of us carry around in our pocket, that he was there. He was at the murder scene with the 2 victims.
I could see Mr. Murdaugh down at the end of the driveway.
Central 717 scene is secured, both gunshot wounds to the head.
First responders described the harrowing scene captured by their body cams.
The male victim was close to a small shed in the dog kennel on the left. There was a large deal of blood that had pooled around his body.
Turn around for me.
I don't have any.
Okay, yes sir, I see that. Okay. This is your wife and son?
And son. It's official that they're dead?
Yes sir, that's what it looks like.
Investigators interviewed Murdaugh in a patrol car.
My boy over there, I could see it was.
Murdaugh said he spent time with Paul earlier in the evening, riding around the property. After Maggie got home, he dozed off on the couch, and when he got up, there was nobody around.
I called Maggie, didn't get an answer. Maggie's a dog lover, and I knew she'd gone to the kennel. I left to go to my mom's. My mom's a late-stage Alzheimer's patient.
His visit with his ill mother would become his alibi. Murdaugh told investigators when he returned around 10 p.m., there was still no one home, so he drove down to the dog kennels. That's when he found Maggie and Paul.
I tried to turn Paul over first, then I went to my wife, and I could see. I touched them both. Okay. I tried to take their pulse on both of them.
When you first saw Paul, you said you tried to...
Detective Rutland interviewed Alec Murdaugh that night and told the jurors she noted despite his claim of touching the blood-soaked bodies of his wife and son, he appeared clean.
How would you describe the defendant's hands when you saw them?
They were clean.
How would you describe his t-shirt?
Clean.
Did those clothes appear to be fresh?
They did.
Like they'd just come out of the laundry?
They could be.
Maggie and Paul died from multiple gunshot wounds. Daily Beast senior national reporter Pilar Melendez shared the investigators' findings.
So Paul was shot first, and he was shot twice with a shotgun. Paul was found here next to the feeding room. Very close by, right here is where Maggie was found.
Maggie was killed with a .300 blackout rifle and suffered 5 gunshot wounds. A crime scene specialist described her final moments.
The shooter was right here. The second shot was not as close, but it still wasn't a long distance. It was approximately here, into the crown of the head.
3 days after the murders, building their timeline, investigators talked to Alex Murdaugh again.
We sat down, we ate supper, and we hung around the house for a little while. I know that Maggie went to the kennels. I don't know exactly where Paul went, but he left the house too. I stayed in the house, and I actually fell asleep on the couch.
The last time that you saw Paul and Maggie's when y'all were eating supper?
Yes, sir.
The Murdaughs were avid hunters and had more than 25 weapons on the property.
I saw one over here.
During a search,
There's one to your right.
SLED agents found spent shell casings
Yeah, 300, yep.
and ammunition that matched the bullets that killed Maggie and Paul, but the murder weapons were never found. Maggie's cell phone was also missing. The day after the murders, investigators found it here on the side of the road, half a mile from the property. SLED analyzed the data from Alex, Maggie, and Paul's cell phones. At 7:56 p.m., Paul sent this Snapchat video of his dad to a friend. Paul is heard laughing in the background.
So around 8:30, Paul's phone starts moving towards the dog kennels. He also is calling and texting two friends then, responding to Snapchats until about 8:40 when he gets on a 4-minute phone call with his friend Rogan Gibson.
Rogan Gibson told investigators their phone call was about his dog who was staying at the kennels. Rogan thought he heard Alec in the background.
That immediately sets a red flag for law enforcement because that totally messes up Alec's timeline. And how could he be at the dog kennels at 8:40 when he claims he was sleeping?
All the responding units to Moselle Road.
2 months after the murders, agents interviewed Alex Murdaugh again, this time at a SLED office. They asked him if he went down to the kennels that night.
I've got information that you were heard in the background. Was it you?
No, sir. Not if my times are right.
Who do you think it could have been?
I have no idea.
In November of 2022, there was a breakthrough in the investigation.
Get back. Get back.
Agents showed Rogan a video of his dog Cash that they had found on Paul's phone. Paul had shot it at 8:44 p.m., minutes before he was killed.
It's a guinea. This is a chicken. Come here, Cash.
And what voices did you hear?
Paul's, Miss Maggie, Miss Alec.
And how sure are you now?
Positive.
100%?
That's correct.
The prosecutor says Alec is heard saying, "Come here, Bubba," calling the family dog.
Come here, Cash.
This is a huge piece of testimony because it places Alec in the kennels roughly 5 minutes before prosecutors say Maggie and Paul were murdered.
Authorities believed Maggie and Paul were shot around 8:49 p.m. when their phone screens were locked and never opened again. The prosecutor asked several other witnesses if they recognized Murdaugh's voice on that video.
And I recognize Alec Murdaugh.
Who do you recognize?
Alec.
Did you recognize on that video?
Alex Murdaugh.
And every single witness has said with 100% certainty that that's Alec in the background of that video. And it also completely shatters his alibi.
Alex Murdaugh's car and cell phone data showed he drove to his mom's house shortly after 9 p.m. Between then and until he returned and dialed 911 at 10:06 p.m., he made 10 calls to family and friends, including 5 to Maggie.
Prosecutors basically allege that after killing Paul and Maggie, Alec took steps to cover up and show that he is talking to all of these people, so how could he murder his wife and son?
As to the motive, the state had a theory that a perfect storm was gathering for Alex Murdaugh.
Alec was scared about information coming out that he had been stealing money from his clients and his law firm for years.
On the day of the murders, Murdaugh was confronted by his firm about missing legal fees of almost $800,000. Also that week, he was due in court for a hearing on the boat crash civil case. Murdaugh was being sued for $10 million by Mallory Beach's family.
But the prosecution is alleging that in order to dissuade further questions about his financial crimes and garner sympathy from the community and his law firm, he killed his wife and son. It's the actions of a desperate man.
The state would call Jeannie Seconder.
After the judge ruled Murdaugh's alleged financial schemes could be brought in, the state called the firm's CFO Jeannie Seconder.
Was anybody at all concerned about those missing fees after those murders happened?
We weren't, because we were concerned about Alec. We weren't going to go in there and harass him about money when his family had been killed.
Mr. Tinsley.
The Beach family's attorney, Mark Tinsley, also testified and told the jurors in the wake of the murders, the civil case against Alex Murdaugh would have gone away.
If Alec is the victim of a vigilante, nobody's going to hold him accountable. The case would be over.
As the state rested its case, Alex Murdaugh made the risky decision to take the stand.
You lied to Maggie, didn't you?
I did lie to Maggie.
Have you made a decision as to whether you're going to testify?
I am going to testify. I want to testify.
Against his attorney's advice, Alex Murdaugh decided to take the stand in his own defense.
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you give today will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, ma'am.
Under questioning by attorney Jim Griffin, Murdaugh is hoping the jury will look past his lies and believe that now he's telling them the truth.
Did you kill Maggie?
No, I did not kill Maggie. I did not kill Paul. I would never hurt Maggie, and I would never hurt Paul. Ever. Under any circumstances.
After all the testimony identifying him on that kennel video, Murdaugh is forced to admit he was with his wife and son minutes before prosecutors say they were gunned down.
Were you in fact at the kennels at 8:44 p.m. on the night Maggie and Paul were murdered?
I was.
Come here, Bubba.
Come here, Cash.
Come here, Bubba.
Cash.
Did you continue lying after that night? Did you not?
But once I lied, I continued to lie. Yes, sir.
Why?
Oh, what a tangled web we weave. But once I told the lie, I told my family, I had to keep lying. I went to...
Murdaugh claims he'd been compelled to lie because of an opioid addiction he battled for 20 years, spending tens of thousands of dollars a week and taking up to 60 or more pills per day.
As my addiction evolved over time, I would get in these situations or circumstances where I would get paranoid thinking.
But he dismisses the prosecution's theory of mounting pressure from his addiction and alleged financial crimes leading up to the murders.
Mr. Murdaugh, on June the 7th, did you believe that your financial house of cards was about to crumble?
Absolutely not.
Mr. Murdaugh, let's start with a few things I think we can agree.
During a 6-hour cross-examination over 2 days, prosecutor Creighton Waters grills Murdaugh.
And you stole all of the money, didn't you?
About his long history of lying to his financial victims.
And Mr. Waters, just to try to get through this quicker, I admit...
I know you want to get through it quicker, but we're not. So answer the question, please.
What I admit is that I misled them, I did wrong, and that I stole their money.
Waters contends it was only because he'd been caught in his lie about being at the kennels that Murdaugh finally came clean.
The reality is you, like you've done so many times over the course of your life, had to back up and make a new story that kind of fit with the facts that can't be denied. Isn't that true, sir?
No, sir, that's not true.
Waters then tries to box him into his new timeline on the night of the murders, zeroing in on 4 minutes between 9:02 and 9:06 when his phone logged 283 steps right before he left to visit his mom.
That's far more steps in a shorter time period than any time prior, as you've seen from the testimony in this case. So what were you so busy doing? Going to the bathroom?
No, I don't think that I
get on a treadmill?
went to the bathroom. No, I didn't get on a treadmill.
Jogging place?
Nope, I didn't jog in
Jumping
place.
jacks?
No, sir, I did not do jumping jacks.
Murdaugh reasserts his theory of the murders.
That I believe that boat wreck is the reason why Paul and Maggie were killed. Because I can tell you for a fact that the person or people who did what I saw on June the 7th, they hated Paul Murdaugh and they had anger in their heart.
Throughout the trial, the defense makes the case that Alex Murdaugh was a devoted family man. His son Buster describes a dad who'd coached his Little League teams and was now stricken with grief.
I mean, he was destroyed. He was heartbroken. I walked in the door and saw him and gave him a hug and just broken down.
Defense calls Tim Palmbach to the stand, please.
The defense calls a crime scene analyst who, based on blood spatter, position of shots fired, and the fact that 2 different guns were used, says there was more than one shooter.
My opinion is the totality of the evidence is more suggestive of a two-shooter scenario.
The prosecution disagrees.
This is Alec, the prosecutor, the lawyer, and he's thinking through this. He's thought through this. He's going to use 2 guns because it's going to confuse people that perhaps there were 2 shooters. But
in his closing to the jury, Waters argues that all the evidence points to Alex Murdaugh.
Paul had sibling from that first shot, a close range shot, with no indication that he detected a threat from the person who fired that weapon. And why? Because it was him. Maggie sees what happens and she comes running over there. She's running to her baby. She got mowed down by the only person that we have conclusive proof was at that scene just minutes before, and who lied about that very fact.
And he describes how Murdaugh could have cleaned up at the kennels afterwards.
It wouldn't take long to strip down and wash yourself off. Get in that cart and head back to the house.
Here we are with a Mr. Clean theory. He takes a hose and washes himself off and gets in a golf cart, butt naked, I guess, and drives to the house.
Defense attorney Jim Griffin pushes back on the prosecution's theory.
He would have to be a magician to make all that evidence disappear. The shooter's covered in blood. The shooter's gun is covered in blood. Common sense thing here is there were 2 shooters.
Instead, said Griffin, investigators zeroed in on Murdaugh to the exclusion of other suspects because he was an easy target.
Long-time drug problem, his financial issues, misconduct were exposed. Easy target for Sled. The evidence is crystal clear. He started fabricating evidence against Alec.
Griffin tells the jury Sled also presented false evidence to the grand jury when seeking an indictment against Murdaugh.
They came up with a report that says Alec's t-shirt had high-velocity blood spatter on it.
The lead Sled agent testified he had not received an email update that further testing had shown there was no blood.
I did not see that report. I was not made aware of its existence.
Sled failed miserably in investigating this case. And had they done a competent job, that Alec would have been excluded a year ago.
Then he addresses the single most problematic piece of evidence for the defense.
Really, we're back to the lie. Because that's all they have in this case. He lied because he had a closet full of skeletons. But what he didn't lie for is because he was covering up the fact that he killed Maggie and Paul. Alec would not have killed the people he loved the most in the world.
This defendant has fooled everyone. And he fooled Maggie and Paul too. And they paid for it with their lives. Don't let him fool you too.
After hearing from 75 witnesses in more than 5 weeks, the jury deliberates for just under 3 hours before returning with a verdict.
The state versus Richard Alexander Murdaugh.
Murdaugh is found guilty of murdering his wife and son.
Guilty. Verdict.
We understand there is a verdict in the double murder trial.
At sentencing the next day, Judge Clifton Newman gives Murdaugh one last chance to appeal to the court.
I respect this court, but I'm innocent.
Unmoved, Judge Newman sentences him to 2 consecutive life terms in prison.
And I know you have to see Paul and Maggie during the night times when you're attempting to go to sleep. I'm sure they come and visit you.
I can't stop thinking about the fact that it is a video on Paul's own phone that really was critical in this case.
Well, I think it is ironic. In a murder case, the victims can't testify, but in many ways they do. Oftentimes they leave something behind that lets you know what happened to him, and in this case it was Paul's video.
Come here, Cash. Come here, Mama. Cash.
It's Paul testifying from the grave.
"48 hours. To miss it would be a crime."
Were you at all prepared for what happened in this case?
Today is February 13th, 2018. We're currently at the Steuben County Sheriff's Office conference room. Present is Karrie and also her attorney. The time now is 10:58 a.m.
At what point did your dad first approach you with this plan?
It was him and I. We were home. He was saying that he was gonna kill himself, but he brought up that there was this other option kind of thing, where he wanted to kill my mom. First bite.
Oh, Karrie, don't push the bib up.
Karrie is doing a good job.
The story in my eyes is about Lloyd and Michelle.
And there's the door, and there's my husband.
He was such an attentive father.
I thought he was a really amazing person. He's very charismatic, shows a lot of care.
Well, Karrie's too cold to be happy.
Michelle is truly a brilliant person. She's got a wonderful sense of humor and this great wit.
What's your favorite toy outside, Karrie? My baby swing. Your baby swing?
My first impression was that they were sort of like a very perfect, ideal family, and they were really good at putting up that front. But over time, that perception sort of started to change.
I was Michelle's lawyer. Her husband had filed for divorce. Michelle was surprised that he filed for divorce. She was a stay-at-home mom. She had done everything she thought she could do to make him and the family happy. Karrie was at RIT. She was set to graduate in another year.
She says that Dad came to her. I can't afford to pay the bills. I can't afford to pay your mother. There's no way out. I have to kill myself. I'm sorry. You guys have to go on without me. Or I got plan B here.
Which was killing my mom. It's true.
He made you choose?
911 Center.
Got something strange happening at a friend's house. I thought I saw the mother standing in the stairway, but she's motionless.
And I could see through to the stairs and see that somebody was clearly at the bottom of the stairs, and they looked like they needed some sort of help.
Did you ever think this case would go the way it did?
No.
2993 for an update.
We're out with a male subject on the top floor of the Spring Street garage.
He's on the ledge.
Do you have live video of this up there?
Safer.
We just don't have cases like this where this level of pervasive evil trickles through an entire life and then ends in such a horrific event.
993, he's on top of the parking garage. He's going to jump. We're out with a male subject on the top floor of the Spring Street garage.
On a cold January day in 2018, 45-year-old Lloyd Nyrider was surrounded by local and state police.
He's on a ledge on the 5th story of a parking garage in Princeton, New Jersey, threatening to jump.
It wasn't supposed to end this way. Almost 30 years earlier, in 1989, 16-year-old Lloyd had fallen for an older classmate, Michelle Londy.
They were going to the same high school, and she was graduating, and we told her she could invite friends, and she invited Lloyd.
Michelle's mother, Jeannie, remembers how quickly the relationship developed.
How did she feel about him?
Oh, she was falling in love.
I pronounce you husband and wife.
2 years later, in 1991, Michelle and Lloyd tied the knot. The newlyweds headed off to college.
Will we be lovey-dovey now? No.
Michelle gave birth to a daughter, and 2 years later, a second child, Karrie.
Who's that?
It's my sister, Karrie.
Well, hi, Karrie.
The family settled in the upstate New York community of Corning. Steuben County District Attorney Brooks Baker.
It's the kind of place where a lot of folks still don't lock their doors.
Corning is a quaint family place. Best known as the headquarters of Fortune 500 company Corning Glass. Lloyd worked there as an engineer.
Hi, Mama. Hi.
Michelle gave birth to a third daughter, and she homeschooled the kids.
I'm making a movie of you.
You are? I'm afraid I'm not being very interesting right now.
Later, she would teach at a local college.
She was an English professor when I met her, so she was big on reading and writing, and she would always really encourage her girls to be well-spoken and educated.
Mina Raj met the Nyriders' middle daughter, Karrie, in ballet class.
Hi, my name is Karrie, and my dance is the Three Little Pigs.
And the two quickly bonded.
All of our dance families were very close.
Her mother, Cynthia, would become one of Michelle's closest friends.
When's the very first time you met Michelle?
I met Lloyd first because he would bring the children to dance classes. He would do their hair, and the mothers were rather smitten with him.
But as Cynthia's daughter, Mina, spent more time with Karrie, she became concerned about Lloyd's overbearing parenting style.
There were times when I'd call my mom and tell her that I was worried about how strict of a disciplinarian he was for really, really small things. It was sort of like you never knew when he would snap. And if he decided he was mad at one of them, he would call them over, yell front and center, have them drop to their knees in front of everyone.
The first time I witnessed that, Karrie was very close to me, and I could physically see her body shaking.
I've seen him slap them.
Slap? Across the
face? On the
face?
face, yeah.
Would he do things to Michelle?
He would put her down with a smile on his face.
And then, around Thanksgiving 2007, Michelle suddenly cut ties with her parents. Her mother believed Lloyd was behind the rift.
What do you think happened?
I think that he threatened her, either to harm the children or to harm her.
She said, Cynthia, it was Lloyd that made me cut off contact with him. He didn't want her to have a place to go if she wanted to leave.
But it turned out to be Lloyd who left the following year. In 2008, he took a new job in New Jersey, leaving Michelle and the kids behind in Corning.
Once he was gone, Michelle seemed like a different person.
Better.
She seemed much more relaxed.
And in 2013, after the couple had divorced, Michelle moved into this new house with the girls. And that's when the real trouble began. Lloyd wanted sole custody of the children.
Lloyd was relentless in using the legal system to harass Michelle. It just never ended.
Michelle's divorce attorney, Susan Betschatomer.
There were 26 separate sets of filings post-divorce.
And how unusual is that?
That is super unusual. If you have 2 or 3, it's a lot. To have 26 is astounding.
And what was he suing for? What were these filings for?
He continually filed things making false claims against Michelle. Lloyd was trying to get out of child support.
And Michelle accused Lloyd of trying to turn the kids against her. The oldest daughter was already living with Lloyd, and Karrie had gone off to college. But Lloyd continued to fight for custody of their youngest child, then 14 years old. We agreed not to show recent pictures of her.
I think anybody who worked in the courthouse had heard about the Nye Ryder case. This husband and wife were going at it nonstop. So this is one of those cases that everybody sort of heard about or talked about over the water cooler or at a bar outing, the name came up. It was one of those cases that just didn't go away.
But in late August 2017, Lloyd did something unusual. Susan got this text from Michelle.
And she says, I'm in shock. Lloyd did not show up for the appearance for his petition for sole custody. He did not withdraw. He did not ask for an adjournment. He did not answer the court's phone calls or emails, nothing.
How unusual is that for him, knowing how many of these filings he's made?
It was very unusual. It was very unusual. It was unthinkable, really.
Because of Lloyd's no-show, the case was dismissed. Michelle seemed relieved and happy.
It was summer, and she had a mutual friend of ours and the children sliding on big blocks of ice down a hill of grass.
Two days later, Monday, August 28, 2017, a family friend came to pick up the Nye Ryder's 14-year-old for swim practice. Instantly, he knew something was very wrong.
911 Center.
Got something strange happening at a friend's house.
Corning Police Sergeant John McDivitt was the first to respond to Michelle's house that afternoon.
All right, so tell me what you did.
So I walked up to the front door here, and through these 3 panes of glass, I could see inside, and I could see a female laying at the bottom of the stairs. Opened the door, a dog came running out, I came running in, and as I got closer, I could see there was a rope around her neck. There was no pulse. She was cold and stiff to the touch.
Here, he found 46-year-old Michelle Nye Ryder dead.
So your first thought when you saw her was what?
It appears to be a suicide by hanging.
But Corning Police Chief Jeff Spaulding wasn't so sure.
Because you couldn't figure out how she got a mark here.
No, I didn't like that. That was unsettling. It appeared as though somebody had gone behind and thrown a rope over the neck and pulled back and down and caused that.
What's more, Michelle's youngest child, the 14-year-old at the heart of the custody battle, and who was supposed to be picked up for swim practice, was nowhere to be found.
Obviously, the number of possible outcomes there that are bad is tremendous.
I said, if we checked basements, if we checked attics, if we checked garages.
In the hours after police arrived at Michelle Nyrider's home, a frantic search was on. Lieutenant Jeff Heverly couldn't find her 14-year-old daughter anywhere.
She should have been around. I knew that she resided with Mom.
Later that day, he got a phone call.
This is Lieutenant Heverly. Can I help you?
Hi, my name is Karrie.
It was 19-year-old Karrie Nyrider, Michelle's middle child.
My friends called me earlier today and told me about my mom, and that she, I'm sorry.
That's okay. Take your time.
He called and told me that my mom hung herself.
Karrie told the officer that her younger sister was safe.
And still with you now?
Yeah, she's in my apartment.
She was nearly 100 miles away with Karrie in Rochester, New York. Karrie then told Heverly how it happened. She had driven back to Corning late Saturday night to spend one last night in her bedroom at home.
When I got there, my mom started freaking out. She would freak out a lot.
Karrie said her mother raged at her, accusing her of taking her father's side in their family court battles.
So she started freaking out and screaming, and she woke up and was afraid, and she went to her room and she was yelling.
Karrie says she decided to leave, taking her younger sister with her.
She claimed that she was concerned for her younger sister, so she had taken her outside, put her in the car, and then had driven her to Rochester.
While police were relieved that Michelle's youngest was safe, Karrie's story didn't really make sense. Why would Michelle be so upset on the same day she had been celebrating her court victory? Those who knew Michelle best couldn't believe she'd take her own life.
I never believed it. She was determined to have a successful life, and she did.
She had a great job, and it was not the place in her life where she would have committed suicide after all of the really difficult years she had been through.
While it appeared Michelle had hanged herself, there was that odd ligature mark on her chin. As police awaited the results of the autopsy,
I thought we would get some definite results. They would say, oh yeah, 100% this is a homicide, or yeah, 100% this is a suicide.
But the medical examiner's conclusion surprised them.
They tell us undecided, undetermined causation.
Michelle's mother didn't need an autopsy to tell her what happened.
I did not believe she killed herself.
She immediately thought murder, and one name came to mind.
I'm thinking it's more than likely Lloyd killed her, but I couldn't figure out how because he had an alibi.
Lloyd Nyrider was in fact more than 2,500 miles away in California for a job interview when police discovered Michelle's body.
How long has he been in California?
Since yesterday.
Karrie told investigators all about it.
Was he in Corning at all yesterday?
No, he helped move me in to my apartment on Saturday.
Okay.
But he wasn't in Corning.
Even if Lloyd wasn't in Corning, he had been close, about 100 miles away.
So all of a sudden, he's only an hour and change away up in Rochester.
Karrie says that after her father helped her move into a Rochester apartment on Saturday, he spent the night in a hotel and flew out to California the next day. He was still there when the family notified him of Michelle's death. He flew back east and within 36 hours showed up at the Steuben County Family Court.
He came to turn off his child support and maintenance payments.
That's the first place he went when he had heard his ex-wife had committed suicide?
That's correct.
Police caught up with him outside the courthouse.
Investigator Volney?
Yeah. Hey, how are you?
Good. Just cautious about how I approach a car. I don't want to startle anybody.
And they sit down in the investigator's car and they do a videotaped interview and have a long conversation.
Did Michelle know she's coming, or?
She did, yes.
Okay.
That was...
Lloyd calmly echoes Karrie's story. In the hours before Michelle's death, he was in Rochester, helping Karrie move into her college apartment.
I go check in at the microtel.
Lloyd says he checked into that hotel Saturday. Hotel security cameras back him up. Karrie came over for a while. Dark parking lot video then shows both he and Karrie heading to her car.
I walked her out to the car.
Then when you go back to the hotel? Right.
Yeah. I invited her to breakfast the next morning.
And at 7 a.m. the next morning, cameras show Karrie arriving for breakfast, now with her 14-year-old sister in tow.
And you also then checked his phone. Where was his phone during that time?
Checked his phone. It kind of corroborated what Karrie had told us, that Dad stayed at the hotel.
But the hotel video tells a different story. When Lloyd walked Karrie to her car that night, he could be seen getting in the car with her and then driving off. And the video doesn't show him coming back that night. So while Lloyd's phone was in the hotel room all night, where was Lloyd? Investigators had to wonder, especially when they looked at the hotel video from the next morning.
We don't see Lloyd all night long. Here it is 6:30 in the morning, and here he comes onto the camera. He's walking across the parking lot, and he's walking to his vehicle. He still appears to be wearing the same clothes that he had on the night before. Lloyd's story was that he stayed at the hotel room all night. The video evidence is saying no, he didn't.
Police were now certain Lloyd was lying to them. They dug deeper, looking for a motive.
He was not in a good financial place. Lloyd had over $100,000 in credit card debt, and he was paying his ex-wife almost $6,000 a month.
Baker says that after Michelle's death, Lloyd tried to collect on Michelle's life insurance for a payout of $260,000. They suspected Lloyd killed Michelle, and Karrie might be covering for him.
So we decided to go up on a wiretap on Lloyd's phone and Karrie's phone.
I'm freaking out.
Me too.
Almost 2.5 months after Michelle's death, police began listening in.
Oh, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. Hello.
Hi, sweetie. How's your drive so far?
Oh, it's fine.
Very good.
In fall 2017, a little over 2 months after Michelle Nyrider's death, Corning police began listening in on Lloyd and Karrie Nyrider's phone calls.
Well, we didn't go up on the wire until mid-November. This had happened at the end of August, beginning of September. So it'd been, 2 months, and there wasn't a lot that was being said. So in order to, kind of refresh things, we did what was called tickle the wire.
Tickle the wire. It's a ruse familiar to cops working drug cases. An investigator calls Karrie, saying they have more questions. Corning Police Chief Jeff Spaulding played the recording for us.
Hi, is this Karrie, narrator?
Yes, this is Chief.
Okay. This is Investigator Volpe with Corning PD. But the reason I was calling, I didn't know if you were going to be around, if you had time to meet up with me, or what time you might have to stop in to see me.
I should be able to meet with you Monday if you're available.
Okay.
After hanging up with police, Karrie quickly called her father.
Just like we hoped, the next phone call's to Lloyd, saying, what do I do?
What exactly did you tell him?
I don't know.
And Lloyd says, it's probably just form, don't worry about it. But then he says, and this is where we sort of puts our doubts aside, he says, but I don't think I want you talking to him.
Tell him I'm sorry. I got a counseling appointment back in New Jersey tonight. And tell him this has been really hard on me.
Yeah.
Could you cry?
I might.
God, it would be nice if then it was just over.
That would be the dream.
Why lie?
Exactly. Why not just go sit down with the investigator, spend 20 minutes, and tell the same story you already have?
Well, if it was anything more serious, I guess you'd have people coming after me anyways, right?
Yeah, he wouldn't ask you to come walk in his front door. He'd say, I have a warrant.
Yeah.
So it can't be that.
Police are clearly suspicious. But with that undetermined official autopsy holding the case back, the DA asked a private forensic pathologist to take a new look and confirm finally whether Michelle was murdered.
We take all the pictures from the autopsy, we take all the findings, the documentation of evidence, and we go in and sit down with him.
There was no body for him to examine because Lloyd had Michelle's remains cremated. But the pathologist saw that rope mark on Michelle's chin and petechial hemorrhaging in her eyes.
And then he leafs through a few more things, kind of the way doctors do, and in silence, and says, this is a homicide.
Michelle Nyrider was strangled to death. Police headed out to confront Lloyd and Karrie.
I mean, at that point, you're thinking Lloyd's the ringleader.
No question.
Do you think that if, in fact, Karrie Nyrider was involved, she was going to be the weak link?
I thought that she would be the weak link. You put her in her interview room without Dad, without her cell phone, and you do a hard interview with her, I thought she would be the first to give.
On January 24, 2018, 5 months after Michelle's death, 2 investigators showed up at Lloyd's office in New Jersey. At the same time, a pair of state police troopers find Karrie at her college internship in Syracuse, New York.
Was this your Hail Mary pass? Was this it?
Yeah, that's what we considered game day.
Investigators break the news to Lloyd.
And they say, Lloyd, look, we got to tell you something. The medical examiner has ruled this a homicide.
Were you down there that night?
No, in Rochester.
And so that night, you were in your hotel room all night? Okay.
And they suggested that, geez, Lloyd, maybe you want to take a lie detector test. And to my surprise, he said sure. So they gave him directions to a police station down in New Jersey where we had a polygraph operator that was already on call.
Lloyd appeared confident in his innocence. 200 miles away in Syracuse, Karrie was anything but.
Karrie cracks.
Karrie cracks.
My dad came down with me Saturday night.
There it was. In barely a whisper on a police audio recording, Karrie admits her father went to her mother's house with her that night, and she helped him get in, undetected.
You walk in the front door of the house. You tell me at this point.
No.
Where was Mom?
She was at the top of the stairs. So she saw my dad come in. And then they started arguing. So he went upstairs and they were arguing in her room.
Karrie said her mother stopped yelling, and it suddenly got very quiet. At first, she tells police she didn't know why, but then she admits.
You saw your mom?
Yeah, I know you did. I know you did. That's what you know.
When you saw her, was she still alive?
It was one of those holy cow moments. It was like, wow.
Investigators then took Karrie to a police station. They wanted the whole story on video. She says her father came to her a week before the murder.
She says that Dad came to her and says, I can't afford to pay your mother. There's no way out.
Lloyd gave Karrie an unfathomable ultimatum.
And so basically he was going to kill himself. Or there was this way to make it so he would kill himself, which was killing my mom.
She says Lloyd laid out his plan. They would make it look like a suicide.
I just gonna put a spell on her mom. And then put the rope around her neck and strangle her.
Karrie says she stayed downstairs, watching over her younger sister asleep in the living room.
And my dad went upstairs into my mom's room. And she was like, what are you doing? Why are you here? And so she was yelling, and then she was like, why? Why?
The commotion woke up Karrie's sister.
Yeah, she woke up, so I had to take her out of there. I was freaking out. I didn't know what was going on. I was like, oh my God. And then I put her in my car.
When Lloyd was finished, he sneaked out the back of the house, around the side, and then climbed into the open rear hatch of Karrie's car. According to Karrie, her 14-year-old sister never knew her father was there.
And then I was like, okay, let's go. And we went to close the hatch. Well, I'm going to Rochester.
Police were now ready to arrest Lloyd. The only problem, he never showed up for that polygraph test. He had disappeared. They lost him.
And they did lose him. But Lloyd still had his phone, and we still were up on the wire on Lloyd's phone. We knew that his phone was in downtown Princeton somewhere.
They managed to trace it to a municipal parking structure. And there on the roof was Lloyd Nyrider.
When the officers moved in to confront Lloyd and to pick him up, he bolted and hopped up on the rail and threatened to jump off the 5-story parking garage to commit suicide.
493.
For 2 hours, Lloyd Nyrider kept police at bay. When he turned his back, they made their move.
This New Jersey State trooper who played football somewhere, he makes a 10-yard sprint and just flattens him. Tackles him.
Delta 22, 993, yeah, one in custody.
Lloyd was arrested and charged with first-degree murder of his ex-wife, Michelle Nyrider.
Why'd you do it, Karrie?
Their daughter, Karrie, who the police believed had been manipulated by Lloyd, faced second-degree murder charges for helping her father get into the house that night. What was your reaction when you heard that?
No, not Karrie. Not Karrie.
In February 2018, District Attorney Brooks Baker began preparations to face off in a courtroom.
This became essentially our nerve center, our war room for the trial.
This is not typical for the cases you usually try
No,
here.
no. Even a murder case, usually we can survive in a box or two, but to go 4 or 5 boxes, demonstrative of how much material there was here.
There's a reason why you have that up there, don't you?
Yeah, and this is the final day of Michelle's life.
It is?
It is. This is a Saturday she was murdered. This is a good day for them. They went icing. You can't really see it, but they're on great big ice blocks. This reminds us why we're doing it, because this lady's not here to have another day like this.
Baker knows his odds of convicting Lloyd will greatly increase if he can convince Karrie to testify against her father.
She is looking at 15 years to life if she cooperates, with the understanding that if she does not cooperate and is not truthful at trial, she'll face 25 years to life.
It takes Karrie sitting in a jail cell a couple of weeks to decide. She agrees to testify against her father and plead guilty. But then, during an interview with investigators, she surprises everyone with a new detail.
When he opened the door, my mom was laying on the floor, and he said he needed my help lifting her.
Admitting for the first time she had an even bigger role helping her father cover up the murder.
We dragged her around the corner, and he tied the rope to the one prong of the banister and lifted her up and put her through her over the side. Sorry.
That's okay. Okay.
She laid her hands on her mother and felt her mother's cold, dead body. That's pretty hardcore. This is the woman that gave you life, and you maybe didn't directly take her life, but you helped the individual that did.
It was so hard to understand. How could a child do this to her mother? Could Lloyd really have manipulated Karrie into this?
And I had that same problem. And even as we were preparing for trial, I said, Karrie, you're going to be asked that question. There was a moment when your father says to you, it's either I have to kill mom or I kill myself, and you have to help me, and those are the only two choices. And why?
She's a smart girl. She could have said no.
Well, and you know, all those folks in Jonestown could have said, we're not going to drink the Kool-Aid.
You think she was brainwashed?
I really think she was brainwashed. We found out that there is a definition for what he was doing.
And are you talking about parental alienation?
Yes, I am, yeah.
Parental alienation. It's when one parent consistently badmouths the other in front of their children, and it's something Michelle worried about. In fact, in these court documents filed in the years preceding her death, Michelle actually accused Lloyd of turning Karrie against her. The district attorney thinks that's exactly what happened. I can understand how you could cause your children to dislike the other parent, but to kill that other parent? That seems like a step too far.
I don't think it's causing dislike. That's not what this parental alienation, it causes them to absolutely devalue them as people.
Case in point, 2 years before her death, Michelle was backing out of her driveway while Karrie bickered with her and tried to block her car from leaving. Friends say Lloyd then convinced Karrie that Michelle tried to run her over. Karrie even called police on her mother, and while the charges didn't stick, the idea seemed to.
If you can brainwash your daughter into thinking that her inching out of the driveway was your mother trying to run you over, then, well, she tried to kill you, so it's okay for you to help try to kill her.
And when Lloyd later gave Karrie that ultimatum...
So basically he was going to kill himself. Or there was this way so he would kill himself, which was killing my mom.
The DA says Karrie felt she had no choice but to choose her father over her mother. But would the jury believe it? As Lloyd's trial approached, the DA was determined to paint a picture of Karrie as Lloyd's pawn. But Lloyd had his own plans. Is his defense going to be that she did it?
It has to be.
How much were you looking forward to trying Lloyd Nyrider for murder?
You know, you never look forward to a trial because it means 90 hours of work every week. This one I wanted to try. I wanted everybody to see who Lloyd was, and for Michelle's sake, to see what he had done to her.
The evidence against Lloyd Nyrider was circumstantial. All the district attorney had was Karrie's word, and the jury might not believe her story. What he needed was physical evidence linking Lloyd to the murder of his ex-wife, Michelle.
We took Michelle's clothes. We had them re-examined by the state police looking for touch DNA. When we got done, what we found was Lloyd's DNA had contact with Michelle's clothing, the pajamas she was wearing the night she was murdered.
Prosecutors gave Lloyd the damning news and a final opportunity to come clean.
We made to him an offer I sort of expected he would never, ever accept. He had to plead guilty as charged to first-degree murder. He would face a sentence of 25 years to life with the possibility the judge can sentence him to life without parole.
And just 2 weeks before trial. So what did Lloyd decide to do?
He decided to plead guilty.
As part of his plea deal, Lloyd had to recount his role in the murder. But when it came time to take personal responsibility...
I thought we were going to go bad from minute one because he starts off blaming Michelle.
There were no cameras in the courtroom, but Lloyd tells the judge he killed Michelle because he believes she might hurt their children.
That would be Lloyd. Blame everybody else, blame the victim.
But then he sort of said, but that doesn't matter, I have no excuse, murder is wrong. And he went through and allocated line by line of what he did.
In the end, Lloyd fulfilled his end of the plea deal, admitting he planned and carried out the homicide and that he manipulated Karrie into helping him.
So what should happen to him?
I want him to have life in prison. Don't want him to ever get out and ever hurt my grandchildren again. He has an evil mind.
Michelle's mother, Jeannie, spent days writing a statement she hopes will persuade the judge to give Lloyd a stiff sentence. She read it to us.
Lloyd Nyrider abused and tortured my daughter for 25 years. He coerced his own daughter into helping him kill her mother. Karrie is now in jail, facing the possibility of years in prison. Lloyd Nyrider should never be given the opportunity to harm anyone again. Please, Your Honor, give him life without parole.
And that's exactly what the judge would do.
And what do you think about what happened today, the outcome?
Oh, I'm so overjoyed. I'm so happy. It's life without parole. And Michelle got justice. So, thank you.
But there was still the matter of Karrie. And what price should she pay for her mother's death?
That's a harder one, isn't it?
That's a hard one. I don't believe she should go to prison. I think that she needs psychiatric help. I think she needs a lot of therapy.
District Attorney Brooks Baker would agree. Karrie needed therapy, but he didn't think that would be enough.
She has to pay a price. She has to serve a sanction. And I think for her own sanity, she needs to serve some penance.
Remember, Karrie initially pled guilty to second-degree murder, a charge that could put her in prison for 15 years. But the DA supported a decision, allowing her to now plead guilty to a lesser charge, second-degree manslaughter. Jeannie again wrote to the judge.
I always ask myself, what would Michelle want me to do? I do not believe my daughter, Michelle, would want a long prison sentence for her daughter. She would want her to eventually lead a happy life.
And the judge would be lenient, very lenient. Karrie Nyrider was sentenced 1 to 3 years in a state prison. It was a huge relief to Jeannie, who planned to tell her and her 2 sisters all about Michelle and just how much she loved them.
She knew that she had lost them, the 2 oldest, and she wanted them to be happy, and she hoped that someday they would realize what was done and come back to her and see how hard she fought for them and to have a good life. She wanted to live a beautiful life, to have a beautiful life, and for them to be happy.
What's your emergency? Okay, my mother, I don't know if she's breathing, but she's laying on the ground in the shower. I need to go over there, see if she's okay. Okay, how do you know she's down there? My dad's over there. He's in the bathroom. I'm not in the bathroom. Okay. I need to put you on hold and not, it's like a house call.
The actual call came out where the victim fell in the shower. The supervisor at the scene called and said, I think you're going to want to come up here. There's quite a bit of blood. I'm thinking this had to have been some fall.
Dr. Newlander said that he removed his wife from the shower and ultimately took her into the bedroom in order to perform CPR. Emergency personnel determined that she was dead shortly after they arrived.
Leslie was so well known. They were both very active in the philanthropic community. He's delivered thousands of babies, so if you just multiply that out, there's literally tens of thousands of people that have some connection to Dr. Newlander.
The medical examiner makes a ruling. She slipped and fell in the shower, accidental death.
Right. I thought, how sad, and then went about doing the other things that I'm supposed to do.
This was supposed to be a fall in the shower, but we've got blood on this wall, some blood spatter up on an angled wall.
And then my suspicions began to rise, and I'm wondering if we missed something here.
Do you have any explanation as to how that blood got on the wall and ceiling?
The best explanation to me is an impact event on or near the south side of the bed.
Impact spatter.
Force impacting liquid blood.
There was obviously a violent encounter in that bedroom, inconsistent with a scenario where she wakes up, goes into the shower, slips, and is discovered by her husband. It's a homicide.
It's an arrest 18 months in the making. It was originally ruled an accident, but police have been investigating ever since.
I don't think people kill people without some reason. So why did he do it?
Cam.
One of the absolute major points of the prosecution's case was the 911 call from the daughter.
Oh my God, my mother! My mommy!
Jenna Newlander was important to the prosecution and the defense because she was the only other person in the house at the time of these events.
Inside this grand home, on the morning of September 17th, 2012,
Is someone coming? Yes, they are. They're on route.
a disturbing scene was unfolding
Okay.
as 23-year-old Jenna Newlander frantically called 911.
Is she doing this? Jenna? Jenna? Oh my God.
Jenna's father, Dr. Robert Newlander, had screamed to her for help. He said he just found his wife on the floor of the bathroom shower. Within minutes, paramedics arrived at the house. 61-year-old Leslie Newlander had suffered a massive head wound. She was pronounced dead at the scene.
You get a call, fall in the shower, you show up expecting to see the accident victim near the shower.
That's right. The expectations are that she's going to be either in the shower or immediately right outside the shower.
Instead, former DeWitt, New York Police Sergeant Scott Capral found Leslie in the bedroom, on the floor, close to the bed.
I walk into the actual bedroom, and that's when I catch all the blood.
Capral noticed blood in different areas of the bedroom, pooled on the rug, and spattered on the wall next to the bed.
My radars going off as far as saying, we need to answer why all this blood is here.
Capral had plenty of questions, but Dr. Newlander seemed to have all the answers, telling investigators that after finding Leslie on the shower floor, he carried her out of the bathroom some 60 feet into the bedroom, where he could more comfortably perform CPR. Something he did despite Jenna's protests.
As he's relaying the story about what had occurred, and as the medical examiner's digesting it, and as we're all digesting it, his actual story of step-by-step process fit the pattern of where you saw these different pools of blood.
The medical examiner on the scene examined Leslie's injuries and ruled they matched up with Dr. Newlander's account. The death? A tragic accident. Leslie Newlander died from hitting her head on the shower bench.
The whole thing was odd. The whole thing was out of character with a fall in the shower.
You've been a cop 20 years. Had you ever seen head trauma like that before?
Well, not from a fall, but as we're listening to the medical examiner explain what he feels could have happened, we're not physicians, we're not forensic pathologists, we're police officers, we're investigators, so we certainly defer to him.
The account of Jenna Newlander, an eyewitness,
I see him actually carrying her,
seemed to back up the medical examiner's ruling that this was an accident when police interviewed her as part of their routine investigation.
He was like putting his face up to her to see if she was breathing.
The death of Leslie Newlander shook the community.
Everyone knew the Newlanders.
Mary Jimbelik was a good friend of the Newlanders.
They seemed like the perfect couple, the perfect marriage, the perfect family, really. Leslie was a fabulous woman, very vivacious, energetic, unpretentious.
She was switched on.
Yes, I know people always speak well of the dead, but truly this was her personality, to be so giving and alive.
Leslie and Bob gave generously, both their time and money. They were well known for their philanthropy. Their social prominence dovetailed with Robert Newlander's professional standing, one of the most highly regarded gynecologists and obstetricians in the Syracuse area.
He delivered a lot of babies around here.
Many, many, with a lot of good feelings toward the care he gave those patients for many, many years.
My interactions with Dr. Newlander were joyful, were these wonderful things that were happening and welcoming their baby, becoming a family.
Julie Crosby, who worked with Dr. Newlander, assisting pregnant women, says patients were drawn to his supportive demeanor.
I found Dr. Newlander to be compassionate, kind, knowledgeable.
That caring way, say those who knew them best, was a defining value for this tightly knit family. The closeness is plain to see in these birthday tributes for Robert and Leslie, made by their children, Emily and Brian from Robert's first marriage, and Ari and Jenna from Leslie and Robert's 28-year marriage, mixed with loving teasing for their mother.
She's like, how does everyone know I'm from New York? I don't understand. How does everyone know I'm from New York? Yeah.
Is a deep appreciation.
Thank you for being you. I love you.
The Newlanders' thoughtfulness was something Mary Jimbelik experienced firsthand after becoming gravely ill with an infection while on vacation in the Czech Republic in the summer of 2012.
I was in a coma and then in the hospital for 3 weeks.
When she finally returned home, the first neighbors to check on her were the Newlanders.
I remember hugging everybody, and I remember Leslie saying, "We're so glad that you made it."
Just 2 days later, Mary received the devastating news. Leslie was dead. A freak accident. She'd slipped in the shower.
I couldn't believe that she had just been to see me and tell me how grateful she is that I'm alive and she's dead. It was shocking. It was overwhelming.
What did you think about that?
Well, at the time I thought, I guess that can happen even to a 61-year-old, very healthy, athletic person.
That was the same conclusion Onondaga County District Attorney Bill Fitzpatrick reached when he first heard about Leslie's death. He believed it was a tragic accident, Until a few months later, when a tip changed everything.
I'm going to get to the bottom of this.
3 months after Leslie Newlander's sudden death, Mary Jembelik began getting some unusual calls from friends.
What are they saying?
We don't think it was an accident.
And who better to share their concerns with than a forensic scientist? For 11 years, Dr. Mary Jembelik was the county's chief medical examiner until she retired in 2009.
My focus for my entire career has been to speak for the dead.
Dr. Jembelik listened carefully. There were questions about all that blood and whispers about the Newlanders' personal life.
Are you hearing about a troubled marriage?
Yes.
Are you hearing about financial problems?
Yes.
In recent years, Dr. Newlander's thriving practice had been derailed by a battle with an insurance company, and he was now delivering half the number of babies he did previously. Dr. Jembelik was reluctant to get involved, but she finally picked up the phone and called her old colleague, DA Bill Fitzpatrick.
Did you feel in some way you were betraying the Newlanders?
I felt I was responding to gossip.
As it turns out, the DA had also been hearing things. He'd received an anonymous letter just before Jembelik's call, suggesting a different side to Dr. Newlander.
That he's not the, the good guy that people are making him out to be. Leslie was trying to break away from this guy.
Jembelik's initial hope was she could soon put all the speculation to rest.
And she volunteers, pro bono to take a look at the case, and would I make the file available to her? And I said, absolutely.
As you began to look at this file, what jumped out at you?
The severity of the injuries compared to the explanation.
Leslie had suffered a penetrating wound toward the back of her head, so severe the blood pooled in her eye.
Had you seen head wounds like this before?
Of course.
In what kind of cases?
Car accidents, falls from, 20-story building, beatings.
What might cause this kind of injury?
A heavy object of some sort.
You're talking about getting hit with some object?
Yes.
What do you tell the district attorney after reviewing the file?
That this is a homicide, blunt head trauma from an assault.
Half a year after Leslie Newlander's death, the investigation picked up steam. Police revisited the death scene to collect more evidence from the now unoccupied Newlander home, which had been sold.
One of the things we find is blood all over the back of a headboard on the bed. We also found blood spatter on the blinds that were behind the bed.
Dr. Newlander was living in a new apartment, which was also searched. By now, he had retained one of the best criminal defense lawyers in the city, Edward Mencken.
This has been an open secret and a subject of gossip and irresponsible rumor now for months. Dr. Newlander has not been charged with any kind of offense.
Mencken assured the DA his client had nothing to hide. So much so that 15 months after Leslie's death, Dr. Newlander, now retired, voluntarily sat for an interview with prosecutors and investigators, even acknowledging there had been problems in their marriage.
But you were sleeping separately?
Yes,
okay, what was the reason for that?
We had the thought about a trial separation.
Yet Robert Newlander portrays the home as peaceful and loving, despite the issues in their marriage. The night before Leslie died, the couple, along with their son Ari and daughter Jenna, had a family dinner at a friend's home. After, Ari headed back to his college dorm, and Jenna went back home with her parents.
We said goodnight to each other, and we loved each other, and everybody kissed and went to their respective bedrooms.
Dr. Newlander tells the DA that early the next morning, he went for a jog at a nearby state park, Green Lakes, and then brought Leslie her usual cup of morning coffee when he got back.
The shower is on, I hear the water running, and I place it on the nightstand.
About an hour later, he says, he returned to check on Leslie. And there she was, lying on the shower floor. Dr. Newlander says he started CPR and tried to call 911, but the bathroom phone wasn't working. So he ran toward Jenna's bedroom, yelling for her to call 911. The time, 8:25 a.m.
My mother's, I don't know if she's breathing, but she's laying on the ground in the shower.
He said he then went back to Leslie and began to move her.
He says he can't see. The lighting is not very good in the bathroom.
He then put Leslie down just outside the bathroom to give her mouth to mouth before moving her again.
I don't know at what age we all learn that you don't move somebody with a serious head or neck injury, but we all know it. And here's a guy that's been practicing medicine for 30 years.
Finally, Dr. Newlander says he placed his wife next to the bed to continue CPR.
There's, more red flags than a bullfight going off in my head when I hear that story for the first time.
Fitzpatrick develops his own theory that hours before that 911 call, Dr. Newlander assaulted his wife in the bedroom and then likely chased her into the bathroom.
I think that he struck her on that shower bench. She may have already been in the process of dying at that point.
Fitzpatrick believes Newlander made up the story of finding Leslie in the shower and called for Jenna so he'd have a witness as he carried his wife back to the bedroom.
What do you think he was doing when he was moving her?
I think now he has got to explain the blood trail from the assault that took place in the bedroom that eventually made its way into the bathroom, and he's got to do it in reverse. He had to move that body himself to explain that blood.
As for the blood spattered in the bedroom, the DA believes Dr. Newlander didn't realize some of it was there because the violence took place before the sun was up.
And don't forget, he's committing this crime. It's dark. He doesn't know where all the blood is.
But if Leslie Newlander was attacked in her bedroom, why were the sheets nearly pristine? The Newlanders' longtime housekeeper provided a clue to investigators.
She looked at the bed and got upset and said those are not the sheets that were on that bed that Friday. She was very confident of that.
The DA believes that Dr. Newlander got rid of the sheets and the weapon on that alleged morning run.
I think the murder weapon is at the bottom of Green Lake somewhere, along with the missing sheets.
With evidence now mounting, the medical examiner changed his original report from accidental death to homicide. Nearly 2 years after Leslie Newlander's death, her husband, Dr. Robert Newlander, was charged with her murder.
The defendant moved the body of Leslie Newlander after her death to make it appear as if she had died from an accidental fall in the shower.
But Dr. Newlander's family says Fitzpatrick has it all wrong. Leslie's own children stand united with the man accused of murdering their mother. In March of 2015, 2.5 years after the death of Leslie Newlander, high drama was about to unfold in the Onondaga County Courthouse.
It has all the elements. The rich defendant, a beautiful wife, and the mystery surrounding it. Was it an accident? Was it a homicide? So it was huge. It was huge for this community.
Not only was a prominent doctor on trial, but 2 of Syracuse's top trial lawyers were squaring off to determine his guilt or innocence.
People were stopping you on the street, hey, Fitz, how's it look? Or go get him, or I hope you lose.
I have never had a client whose innocence I believe in more firmly than him.
Ed Mencken spoke to local reporters, but declined our request for an interview.
If either one of them finds blood in the water, they go right for it.
We asked retired local attorney Jim Stevens to explain the defense's case. He's a CBS News consultant who attended the trial.
It was going to be riveting. It was a top-notch trial all the way around.
Each day in court began with the same scene in the hallways. Free on $100,000 bail, The doctor would arrive, flanked not only by his children, but by Leslie's sister and brother.
He didn't do it. That's the message. He didn't do it. It was not a crime.
The state has bigger hurdles to contend with than just images. Prosecutors have no weapon and no clear-cut motive.
Is it risky to go to a jury without those things?
Sure. The jurors, they're not any different than you and I. They want answers.
Fitzpatrick believes the evidence, like the blood spatter in the bedroom, will tell the jury that this was no accident, and he's enlisted the help of forensic scientist Karen Green to make his case.
Bloodstains can tell you a lot.
They can tell you a lot, and they're associated with just about every crime scene that we go to.
There were no cameras in the courtroom, so we asked Green to take us through her blood spatter analysis.
There was spatter on the headboard. There was spatter on items on the nightstand just south of the bed, spatter on the blinds above the bed, and there was spatter on the south wall that was about 7 feet to the south of the bed.
Tell us about the south wall. We've been referencing it. What are the two spatters that are marked SBD1?
That's an area where we saw over 100 spatter stains.
The prosecution contends the spatter was primarily something called impact spatter, created when Leslie was attacked in the bedroom. To better understand the terminology, we built a set and supplied Karen Green with stage blood to give us a rudimentary lesson.
When we talk about impact spatter, what does that mean?
Impact spatter is force applied to liquid blood. So I'm going to pour some of our artificial blood here into my hand, and I'm going to punch it, and that's force going into a blood source.
The force impacts the blood, and the blood spatters.
Yes, and then the blood breaks up into smaller drops.
It's impact. That's one way blood gets out.
You can see how it's radiating out. We have some smaller stains with some directionality up to the top.
For the Newlander case, Green conducted various experiments trying to recreate the spatter in the bedroom, going so far as placing a rock covered in plastic and a wig on a bed to simulate Leslie's head.
I had a location that was similar to the Newlander bedroom with the slanted ceiling. I used all the measurements that were in the scene, the approximate height of the bed. I had a nightstand, and then I put liquid blood and I impacted it. I just had to verify that an impact on or near the south side of the bed could create spatter 6 to 7 feet away in the same distribution.
And could it?
I was able to recreate with an impact event, an impact scenario, all of the spatter that I saw in this bedroom.
But the defense mocked Green's methods and said they amounted to nothing more than whacking a mannequin over the head.
The defense had their own blood spatter expert. He testified it was not possible to determine if Leslie's death had been an accident or a homicide because the investigation had been flawed. There were not enough close-up pictures of the blood. Some of the evidence in question, like the headboard and the blinds, had been collected months after the incident. Emergency personnel had walked all over the scene. In fact, the defense suggested that EMTs may have been responsible for some of the blood spatter.
First responders probably had blood on their hands, and that the gloves were just peeled off, and in so doing, the blood flies from the gloves, and you don't have an impact, but you have a cast off.
The defense also argued that the blood could have been cast off by Dr. Newlander himself. The doctor said he'd been wearing a long-sleeve shirt that became so wet and bloody as he tried to frantically save his wife's life that he pulled it off.
Those spatters by the bed were caused by him removing his shirt.
Fitzpatrick scoffs at those theories, pointing out that paramedics are trained to carefully remove their gloves and that no gloves or shirt could account for the amount of blood in that room.
That doesn't explain any of the blood. It's a significant amount of blood.
The defense insists it was an accident and that there may have been a good reason why Leslie Newlander fell that morning. She had vertigo, a dizziness disorder. Leslie's personal trainer told the jury that Leslie's condition had grown worse, and her sister Joanne testified that it ran in the family and that she herself suffered from it.
The idea of her sister testifying, is that affecting your view of the case?
Sure. Why wouldn't she be madder than hell? And why wouldn't she be saying, I'm not testifying for you. What are you, crazy? You killed my sister.
To bolster their case of an accidental death, the defense hired Dr. Daniel Spitz, a medical examiner working in Michigan, who's seen more than his share of traumatic head injuries.
His testimony basically is the massive head wound that caused her death was caused as a result of her falling in the shower against the stone bench.
If Leslie sustained an injury in the shower by her head striking the stone bench, what does this do for Dr. Newlander's defense?
Home run.
But the prosecution countered that Leslie suffered at least 2 blows to her skull, and that the wounds were not consistent with her head striking a straight edge like a stone shower bench.
It should be like a simple linear fracture with some bleeding underneath of it, but you don't get the complex depressed fracture like this.
Dr. Jimbelik did not testify at trial, but consulted with the prosecution. Leslie's other injuries, they say, don't add up to a slip and fall.
There were abrasions, scrapes of the skin on her cheek, a bruising on her nose, more on the left side of the cheek as well, bruising and scraping on her neck.
If she slipped and fell in the shower, why aren't there any injuries to her back or her legs, her knees, her elbows?
Critical to the prosecution's case, not just how Leslie Newlander died, but when. Dr. Spitz estimated Leslie died around 7:30 a.m. But the DA makes the case that her death could have occurred as early as 4:15, which fits his theory of a pre-dawn assault.
The time of death is absolutely inconsistent with the defendant's story.
There is now just one more witness left to testify, the doctor's daughter. What did she see that terrible morning?
She was there. She was there. The day that Jenna was to testify, the spectators were lined up in anticipation of what she was going to say.
2.5 years after Jenna Newlander's beloved mother, Leslie, died,
Thank you for being you. I love you.
the now 25-year-old devoted daughter is about to take the stand to defend her father.
There was no doubt there was pain in that courtroom when she testified.
She's trying to secure her father's freedom, and she's dealing with the death of her mother.
Right. I don't know how she got on the stand to do it.
She's the only other eyewitness. She was very, very important to the outcome of this case.
With all eyes on her, Jenna tearfully describes the mother she lost.
She was genuinely upset and mournful about testifying. The testimony forced her to bring some memories to the surface of her mother, who she clearly loved very, very much.
Jenna then tells the jury what happened in the Newlanders' home in the hours before her mother died. She says she was with her mom in Leslie's bedroom until 2 a.m. And Jenna clearly remembers the sheets on her mother's bed that night. She says they're the same ones in the death scene photos. Sheets the housekeeper said had been changed.
The changing of the sheets was a significant issue. And why would you change the sheets? Change the sheets because there was blood on it.
No bloody sheets, there's no impact event.
Right, on the bed.
I need to go over there and see if she's okay. Okay.
Then there's perhaps the most critically important piece of evidence.
I need to put you on hold. It's like a house phone.
The later part of the 911 call. Jenna put the call on hold in her mother's office to get closer to the bathroom where Leslie was. Both sides argue Jenna's cry, "There's blood everywhere," is key and supports their case. To demonstrate the arguments, we made an animation of parts of the Newlander home based on evidence the prosecution presented at trial. The prosecution believes as Jenna was running into the bathroom, she passes blood here and here. A trail of blood that could not yet exist unless Robert Newlander attacked Leslie earlier in the bedroom and then left her in the shower.
She has passed the entrance to the bathroom where there's a significant amount of blood on the wall that only could have come from Leslie's head, perhaps by being pushed against that wall or perhaps being chased.
The DA says Jenna then grabbed the landline phone in the water closet to reconnect with 911 and yells, "There's blood everywhere."
Oh my God, there's blood everywhere!
You're saying it's a big deal how she even phrased, "Oh my God, there's blood everywhere," that her mother's not part of that sentence.
Exactly. Her initial response would have been, "Oh my God, my mother's bleeding, my mother's on the ground." She would have referenced what she was seeing.
Fitzpatrick believes Jenna drops the phone and the call captures seconds later the exact moment when she first sees her mom as Dr. Newlander starts to carry Leslie's body around the corner, out of the shower, and into Jenna's view. It is then she lets loose a cry of pure anguish.
Oh my God, my mother! My mommy!
As painful as it is to listen to, it is inconceivable that that call is anything other than a declaration of guilt against her father.
But the defense says the same call proves Dr. Newlander's innocence, that when Jenna runs into the bathroom, there is no blood on the walls yet. Jenna testifies she picks up the phone by the toilet, drops it because it isn't working while rushing to help her father. They carry her mother to this area, right outside the bathroom, and Jenna says it is at that point she takes a cordless phone from her mother's dressing room and reconnects with the 911 operator. In the defense view, this is when Jenna sees blood on and around her mother. This is when she yells, "There's blood everywhere."
Oh my God, there's blood everywhere!
The defense's take on that is that her mother is present in front of her and she's reacting to her mother, the blood that's on her mother, and maybe blood on the wall and on the floor as well.
Jenna was asked on the stand, "Did you see blood on your way to the water closet?"
Correct.
She answered what?
She said no.
That supports the notion that the first time she saw blood, she was looking at her mother.
Correct.
The DA, though, doesn't believe Jenna could do everything she claims to have done during the 13 seconds the 911 call was on hold. Fitzpatrick tried it himself and says it took him about 50 seconds.
It is not physically possible to do that in 13 seconds. It's not even a close question.
There is one other part of Jenna's testimony that may be crucial. Jenna tells the jury that as her father was tending to her mother in the bedroom, she saw him take off a blood-soaked shirt and throw it to the side. Now remember, the defense suggested that tossing this bloody shirt may have caused some of the blood spatter in the bedroom, but the shirt has never been found.
There isn't a single witness that saw him with a long-sleeve shirt on other than Jenna.
If we injected Jenna Newlander with truth serum and said, "Did your father kill your mother?"
She would say no. I don't think in her mind Jenna believes that her father did this. I think she has created a protective world in her mind where mom slipped and fell in the shower.
But the question now isn't what Jenna believes, it's what the jury believes.
I'm worried that they're having an emotional reaction to the agony of this girl. They know that this girl wants them to vote not guilty. And they know that this 60-plus-year-old defendant is unlikely to reoffend. And all of those emotions can play to the detriment of a case that has to be proven beyond a reasonable doubt.
After 8 grueling days of testimony, District Attorney Bill Fitzpatrick addressed the jury one last time for closing arguments, asking them to pay close attention to the physical evidence, specifically the blood spatter on the walls and the injuries to Leslie Newlander's body.
As I said many times in the trial, Leslie will speak to you, ladies and gentlemen. You have to listen to her.
And also, to listen carefully to the words of Jenna Newlander in that critical 911 call.
Oh my God, he was blood everywhere.
It proves his guilt beyond any shadow of a doubt.
But there's one thing the DA could not share with the jury. What he suspects was the motive that sent Robert Newlander into a murderous rage that morning. Investigators learned from a friend of the Newlander family that Leslie was planning on signing a lease for a new apartment on the day she died.
Leslie was on her way out, and this is not a guy that can deal with that.
But this was not presented at trial, Fitzpatrick says, because the memory of that witness changed. She later said the apartment was for both Leslie and Robert. Ed Mencken strongly denies these accusations and insists there was no motive.
In the summation, he didn't just say not guilty. He said innocent.
Innocent. He said innocent throughout.
The jury would deliberate for 3 days before alerting the judge they had reached a verdict. Robert Newlander returned to the courthouse once again, arm in arm with his family. The pain etched on his children's faces. 2.5 years after Leslie Newlander's death, the jury found Robert Newlander guilty of her murder. A heartbroken Jenna Newlander broke the silence of the hushed courtroom, crying out loud to her father, "I was there. You didn't do it."
Let me know when everybody's said. I'm only saying it once.
Outside the courtroom, a visibly shaken Ed Mencken addressed the media.
Bob Newlander is the most honorable person I have ever met. This case has been a travesty from start to finish. It is not finished.
And so, the Newlander children turned to attorney Gerald Shargell, legendary for his defense of mob boss John Gotti, to handle their father's appeal. Shargell wasted little time calling for a hearing to throw out Newlander's conviction, alleging there was serious juror misconduct. In the spotlight, a juror named Jonna Lorraine. According to an alternate juror, Lorraine had received texts and other communications about the case during trial, against Judge Miller's orders not to discuss the case.
A search of the accused juror's phone revealed she had received some potentially prejudicial texts, including one from her father which read, "Make sure he's guilty." But weeks later, the judge upheld Dr. Newlander's conviction, pointing out the juror had been undecided in early stages of deliberations, and in the end, the judge ruled she had taken her role seriously.
Almost 4 months after the verdict, sentencing would finally commence. With family photos on display, the Newlander children returned to the courthouse. For the first time,
all right,
cameras are allowed in court. Facing a maximum sentence of 25 years to life, Newlander's family begged the judge for the minimum sentence of 15 years. Leslie's sister, Joanne, spoke on the family's behalf.
Had any of us even slightly suspected foul play of any sort, we would not be here today on Bob's behalf.
And then it was time for Robert Newlander to address the court.
My head is unbowed by the verdict of this court. For an innocent man who has been wrongfully convicted, I would not, it did not take a life. I love my wife, Leslie, very much, and I mourn her every day, now and forever.
The judge sentenced Robert Newlander to 20 years to life in a New York State prison.
In the jury's eyes, Dr. Newlander, you intentionally murdered your wife and then attempted to use your own daughter to cover it up. A daughter who most clearly adores you, which is as diabolical as it gets.
As Dr. Newlander is escorted out of the courtroom to begin his sentence, Jenna calls out.
Love you, Dad.
The Newlander children have now lost not only their mother, but their father as well.
I hate what this has done to Jenna. That's probably the most painful thing of all. He brought Jenna into that process. He made her a witness for his own purposes, and that is cruel.
But Dr. Mary Jimbelik knows she has also played a role in their suffering.
Do you have any regret about your involvement in this case?
No. This is probably the hardest thing I've ever done in my whole career. However, it was the right thing to do, and I hold on to that. We are finally giving Leslie the acknowledgement of what happened to her.